Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another instalment of the Darting Around podcast. My name is Jesse Dart, joined by, as always, Jaden Griffin, my very loyal co-host. Jaden, I'm actually really excited for today's topic. I think it's going to be a good one for the wider AFL community to hear about.
Yeah, definitely something that's interesting. I think a lot of people have probably given it passing thoughts, with Tasmania, but have probably never thought deeply on how it would work. And that's something I really want to talk about today because I think it's a very, very good topic, and I have a lot of thoughts.
Now, for those who never played Blues Clues and couldn't follow that breadcrumb trail, we are talking about potential of an AFL team down in Tasmania, how it would potentially work, how the development side of things, how it would be financed. It's a bit of a deep dive into the Tasmanian things. Now, I have heard they do have internet down there, so hopefully they will be hearing us on the show. So thank you to all our new Tasmanian listeners now. We hope to see you a few more times, but we'll get right into it. We'll start with an honour roll of sorts. Some of the best players that we've seen come out of Tassie. Carl Ditterich, obviously champion of St Kilda, name synonymous with the Saints. He was a Tassie boy. Another name synonymous with St Kilda, Nick Revolt, obviously his cousin Jack as well. Alistair Lynch, Tasmanian boy. So is Matthew Richardson. Hugh Greenwood. Jeremy Howe, one of your boys, Mitch Robinson.
Yeah, old Mitchie. Hard nut.
Lockie Weller, Graham Birchall, superstar player, Myercheck, and Tommy Bellchambers. So, just looking at that list, I mean, pretty good level of talent there.
Yeah, it is. For such a small portion of the community, they've definitely had a few superstars, and then just a lot of serviceable players too. Good talent down there.
I mean, on the balance of things, that wouldn't be a bad team.
It wouldn't be. You'd need a few more, but
that's a good call. That's how a team of 18 works, Jan. You do need more than the bare minimum amount. But look, they do have a lot of quality, serviceable players. Now you've got a lot you want to talk about, so we're not going to waste too much time. We'll start with a pretty simple one that ties into the title of the episode. What are they going to wear?
Yeah, so I actually didn't have to give this one as much thought as I thought I would have because I'm a big fan of the cricket, and I think the Tasmanian state cricket team have done it right with the dark green, the red, and then that beige colour. I think it's really synonymous with the state now, and I think that would there's a lot you could do as well with the uniform. I think it has to be the Tassie Devil as the logo, right? They have to go as that as the mascot, and then there's so much you could do with the actual jumper. But I think that's definitely the colours they're going to use. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the green's important. I would quite like to see green and yellow go together here. I think that would work. So would you put like the mascot on the jumper? How are we going to work that one?
I think I would have some sort of maybe like Geelong-esque with like a face of the Tassie Devil, but then instead of the triangle, it's like the shape of Tasmania or something like that. You could.
We're really going tacky for the debut season, aren't we?
Look, I just think it's. Yeah, I think that's what I would do personally. Again, I'm by no means a graphic designer, or I don't have an artistic bone in my entire body. No, but yeah, I think that would look good.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll give a quick shout out as well to Lockie for our very snazzy Darting Around podcast logo as well.
Oh yeah, because neither of us have any form of talent to make that, but I do think it is a really nice logo. So shout outs to Lockie.
Or just talent in general.
Yeah, that's true. Well, for you at least.
Yeah, I mean that's accurate. Can't dispute that. White for the away jumper, I feel like pretty safe there.
Yep, I'd agree.
Any obscure clash jumpers they could tune out?
Just going through quickly, I don't think so, which is another reason I like the green. Because, it doesn't really clash with too much as far as I'm aware. I think the GWS and Gold Coast, when they came in, went very bright.
They did.
Because there weren't that many jumpers in the game at the moment that were super bright, so I think that worked well for them. But yeah, I think the green is nice, and with a burgundy red and the yellow.
Yeah, well, I can't dispute that. So you reckon just a devil as the whole branding, the mascot, the main kind of media centerpiece for the team?
I think it has to be. I don't really think there's much else that they could use. The Tasmanian Devils, obviously, it has state in the name.
They could pay out Charlie Dixon and become the Tasmanian Lumberjacks.
Well, they could, but They
could yell timber every time they score a goal.
They could.
Can you imagine how obnoxious that would be?
That would be very, very obnoxious. You are correct. I would not like to see that.
You'd like them to hear yellow and black every time Richmond do their songs. Like, congratulations, you did the colour wheel.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
But no, look, in all seriousness, though, we probably start ragging on a big percentage of the AFL fan base, there, otherwise no one's going to tune in. But look, I'm going to kind of throw a cross sport here. Almost like a very alligator blood style jersey, I think would really suit Tasmania.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. I think...
Just spotted my stubby hole and reminded me that that's the colours we're talking about.
It is super hard for me. Like I said, I'm not a graphic designer. I think I can look at something and tell you if I like it, but I can't really form something in my head that I think I like. There's so much they could do with it. I think Tasmanian Devil's a great logo though. That I'm definitely for.
Yeah, well look, we'll move on to a bit more of a serious topic now so we can take less random pot shots at people. The finances. I think this is a really big topic I really want to sink up my teeth into. First of all, there's been bids in the past, haven't there, Jamie? Can you give us a bit more background on those from what you were telling me before?
Yeah, so it was 2008, I think, when Tasmania initially launched their bid, which was obviously beaten by Gold Coast and Greater Western Sydney, and we'll have a topic on, or we'll talk a little bit later about why I think that was. But they did really not get probably the backing they needed. They did manage to secure a sponsor from Mars, but it was going to be for $4 million over a 3-year period.
I thought you meant the planet for a second. I was genuinely really confused.
No, yeah, Mars the confectionery, obviously, famous for the Mars bar.
Good insight.
They managed to secure $4 million over 3 years, but the money just really wasn't coming through from a federal government level and also from an AFL level, I think. And that's probably why they chose to go with Greater Western Sydney and Gold Coast, two industries that have massively rely on tourism, much more so than Tasmania. Because it's just not enough. Starting an AFL club is a very, very, very expensive investment, and you want to be sure that it's going to work. And I guess just without that initial backing, they didn't really have faith in it. Whether I agree or not, it's a different story. I think I would have loved to have seen it happen personally. I think they deserve it way more than either of the two clubs that have come in. But I think they kind of people... It's much more luxurious to live in Greater Western Sydney or Gold Coast, right? Specifically Gold Coast, but also, just in New South Wales in general, I guess.
Yeah, look, that's fair. My counterpoint to that being, do people really majorly factor footy into their tourism plans? Most people don't go to Gold Coast to watch the Suns. They go for the theme parks.
That's true, but I also think it helps, right? Like, whenever I'm in Melbourne, I go to... I mean, obviously, I'm probably a bit more of a footy fan than your average person.
Yeah.
But I always make sure I go to at least 1 to 3 games whenever I'm in Victoria, because I do love the footy so much, and if it is available there, I think that is a factor. But also, player retention.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Do people want to live in the city where your club is? And if the answer is no, it's going to be very, very difficult to really build something, which I think is a concern for the AFL. Not so much for me personally, because I think so many young kids, they just want to play footy. And at least I think we've seen it with Gold Coast, is that luxurious city and, having all that stuff to do can be a bit of a distraction, and you can maybe just not really develop the club culture.
Well, we've seen the headlines this week with Richmond. Exactly,
and it's hard too, because Richmond have actually been a club who have had very, very good club culture pretty much since they sort of rose to prominence in 2017. But yeah, if you don't have that real tight bond, which I just don't think these, especially not Gold Coast, to an extent, I think GWS do. But yeah, if you don't have that really, really tight bond and want to really play for your club and your other players, it's not really going to ever be anything special. So that's why I think Tasmania would be fine. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Obviously, there's a lot more things that go into it.
And I understand there was more recent talk of a Tasmanian AFL bid.
Yeah, so it was actually came from the Labor government. If they had have won the 2019 election, they pledged $25 million in funding for a Tasmanian AFL team, which is much more
Significant amount of money.
It is a significant amount of money. It's a lot of money, but it's much more the kind of figure you would be looking at to start something like a Tasmanian AFL team.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have already, I think, they have so much of the foundation already there, but it's still such a massive, massive jump to begin that. And that $25 million would have really, really helped. I think it would have... They also need to just do a lot of just development in general around the area. I think they were saying... There was also a study done by... It was during the 2008 bid. Yeah. They were saying if footy doesn't get more backing in Tasmania, they're at risk of losing the state to soccer. And they said there was a recent, I don't know what it was, a census style thing on school kids, and soccer leagues have more enrollments than AFL leagues around Tasmania, and that's pretty sad. As a state, I'd probably call it. I mean,
it is a footy state.
It is a footy state.
Tasmania is a footy state.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
I just don't think that's good enough, and I think the government especially and the AFL have let the state down.
It's disappointing because I feel like, especially with the push for New South Wales and Queensland, is that, people might support both an NRL team and an AFL team, but they're not going to suddenly ditch the Rabbitohs or suddenly ditch the Cowboys and go and support Gold Coast or Greater Western Sydney. But with Tasmania, it's a clean slate, so you can really get the passion in through the doors. You can really get this love of the game through these new fan bases, as opposed to having to worry about shoehorning fan bases in. And
also,
from other sports.
they've got the Lions and the Swans already. Tasmania don't have a team, so it's you're 100% right. Like, why are they trying to force these fan bases and build something that doesn't? Look, I'm grateful. I think more teams is better for the competition. Obviously, I think the more we shy away from it being the VFL, the better, because it is the AFL. But because it is the AFL, that also means encompassing all of Australia, and Tasmania is part of that.
And right now, there's 3 states, or 1 state and 2 territories without any representation.
Yeah, and it's not good enough.
Is it a national competition with that?
You have to argue no.
I mean, obviously the NT's a bit harder. I understand sometimes geographics come into play. Fair enough. Canberra, bit tougher given the.
Yeah, just how small it is, I guess.
And also the Raiders got there first
in
the NRL.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference. But Tasmania, I mean, of those 3, I mean, yes, Darwin's obviously a massive footy territory. Like, they deserve a team, but they're going to have to... I think there's definitely more work that would go into a Darwin team than there would be for a Tasmania team. 100%.
100%. I have no doubt in my mind. As I said, Tasmania already have such a good foundation. I was... Actually, I'll leave that point for a later topic. But also, I just wanted to read out some of the guidelines that the AFL sets as a precedent for Tasmania getting a team, which was they wanted 50,000 members, an upfront capital of $40 million, a unified Tasmanian football community, AFL standard venues, and now I don't actually know how many it was, but I will say it does say venues here, which is implying more than one.
So it's implying both Hobart and Launceston have AFL standard grounds.
Yeah, and then a minimum of 10 Tasmanian players in the AFL. And then also a respectful exit strategy for current fly-in, fly-out Victorian tenants North Melbourne and Hawthorn.
Alright, can we go through those points one by one?
Yep. Do you want to start with 50,000 members?
I do, because most clubs don't have that.
100%, and you're 100% right.
That's an insane criteria.
That is an insane criteria. What does that put you? Top 6, 7 in the AFL on membership?
Yeah.
What did Gold Coast have last year? 18,000, if that.
It's some Victorian teams don't have 50. I think, there's some that are...
I would be surprised if Saints and North...
Even Bulldogs.
Even the Doggies had 50,000. That is an absurd number. An absolutely absurd number.
And also, members don't make or break the club as well. There's plenty of... I mean, for every member of Carlton, there's probably about 4 or 5 different supporters.
Exactly. And how many... Like, realistically...
That's a tough criteria.
It is. That is super, super... I just think it's dumb.
That's literally saying to Tasmania, we don't want you.
When they brought in Gold Coast, did Brisbane even have 50,000 members? Because I don't think they did.
No.
Like
Sydney probably did in
because again, Sydney spent a long time developing that brand. They're a very, very good club.
But they also had a 5-year head start on the Bears.
Yeah.
And a 15-year head start on the Lions.
Yeah.
So it's just such a tough criteria. What's the second point?
So it's an upfront capital of $40 million, which is I think what prompted the Labor government to pledge that 25 because it's probably much easier to source 15 million in sponsorships and investments than it is to source 40.
Yeah.
What an absolutely insane amount of money.
It's a lot of money.
Like, I just cannot believe that they're sitting here basically telling a state that they can't have a team unless they have $40 million. Like, that, on top of the... Oh, actually, we'll get to it later. But yeah, like, who even has that kind of money? Especially, like, they have the TSL. They're not even one of the bigger leagues because they haven't had an opportunity to be. Because they get, what, two games a year? It's ridiculous.
It makes it really hard for, like, a proper Tasmanian bid, unless it's properly backed by, like, even, like, a Mars sponsorship. Like, you need about 3 or 4 of those, that caliber of sponsor to all come in. And they're not going to all want to share silver sponsorships. They're all going to want the top one.
Exactly. And that's the hard thing as well, is, yeah, you could probably do it. But then you've got 10 sponsorships, and then what does your jersey look like? What does your stadium look like?
Yeah. It's just a walking billboard.
Yeah, and no one wants that. You obviously, if you're going to bring in a Tasmanian club, you want them to have a really nice identity because it is a great part of Australia.
Tasmania's potentially be a heart and soul club.
Yeah.
And it's not been given that. What's point 3?
So point 3 was a unified Tasmanian football community, which I didn't necessarily understand. Is that something to do with the TSL? Do you know much about local Tasmanian footy?
Not much more than the average non-Tasmanian, in fairness, but
very little.
Yeah, but look, that seems to pretty much be that every single man, woman, and child in the state wants to see the AFL team, and they're all going to support it.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think that is basically...
That's my interpretation anyway.
I think you're right. I think that's basically a promise from the citizens of the state that they will support this club.
Which I think, overarchingly, they will.
They definitely would. They would be... Like, look what happened when the Eagles came over, right? And when the Crows came in. It's not something I would be... It's a bit different with Sydney and Brisbane, because obviously they're not footy states. The people who did follow AFL in those states were probably already diehard fans who probably already had their team. But a lot of the younger people in those states are diehard Swans and diehard Brisbane fans.
A lot of East and South Fremantle supporters are West Coast supporters because that was who you supported when it came in.
Yeah.
And just building on that point as well, like, yes, people in Tasmania have AFL clubs, but we've seen it with Fremantle. It is possible to take members and supporters off that powerhouse. So yeah, there's obviously quite a few Hawk supporters. Some residual Saints supporters from their time down in Tasmania as well. But I still think you could take away a fair amount of us. I don't think it's going to be impossible to grab a decent membership. Not 50,000, but...
Yeah, and look, I will preface that with also saying that at the time of this guidelines being set, Tasmania had 90,000 members across the AFL clubs.
Right.
So I guess they were kind of expecting half of that. I still think that's way too much for...
So was it paid members or was it just members?
It does just say... Tasmania has 90,000 members for the existing AFL mainland clubs.
For the 50,000 criteria, was that paid or...
Oh, I'm not sure. It just says 50,000 members. I have to assume it's paid.
Just cheat and give away $5 memberships.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, you could...
No reason why you can't do that.
And I guess part of that just comes under that unified Tasmanian football community. Obviously, they are... Even if you don't support the club, they're going to go to the games, right? People want to watch footy.
Yeah.
Like...
I've been to Essendon West Coast games before.
If you haven't had footy in your state ever, and a lot of people can't afford to fly over to your Melbournes and your New South Wales and stuff to watch games, they're just going to go to the games. They're probably... Like, even...
There's always good turnouts at Bloodstone,
yeah,
and up in Launceston as well. So
yeah.
it's not fair to say that no one's going to turn up to the games. People are going to turn up anyway.
Exactly, and I completely agree. And they can do their thing with the because obviously Optus hikes their ticket prices up purely because there's only one game a week, and then they can have the food and the beers and stuff. People are going to buy it. It's the footy. People love it as an experience. It would go off in Tasmania,
but also bring the prices down. Get people in the gates.
Yeah.
Make it a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Get that fan base behind you. If they did it old school, they could do really well out of this.
Yep, and because imagine if by some miracle, all 90,000 of those members just go straight into this new club. That is suddenly one of the richest clubs.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
That's the second, third biggest club behind Collingwood and Richmond, maybe?
Yeah.
That probably beats out Carlton and Essendon.
Yeah, it definitely beats out us. I think we hit... I don't even know what we hit. We hit a new record recently, which was like 70,000 or something.
Yeah.
For the last 10 years.
So for Carlton, which is a club that's been around for 150 years, to have 70, If then the AFL turn around and say Tasmania, right, you're brand new, have 50.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They've just set such unrealistic, mean standards, really. They've just tried to bully them out of having a spot.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but the AFL wants this team built in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
So, what, point 4?
It was AFL standard venues.
Now, this is an interesting point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So, we were going to elaborate on before, but I think we can talk about this now.
Can I just put this aside? That's on top of the upfront capital of 40 million.
Yeah.
Like, what? How many years How many years of having 2 successful clubs and making a bucket ton from the footy was Optus in the making? Like, not that Subi was a bad stadium, but if they're expecting something like at your level of Optus, they're absolutely dreaming. And especially when they add that S on the end and it becomes venues, and they want more than one, you're absolutely dreaming.
You either... I think both... More so Blundstone, but also Launceston. So I think both are up to AFL standard. I don't think it's fair to say otherwise. Because they wouldn't be playing there if they went up to AFL standard.
Yeah, just increase seating capacity and they're fine.
Yeah,
that's literally all you need.
Like, this isn't rocket science. But why do we need 2? Why the club has 2 home grounds?
And I think that must, except
for GWS with Canberra.
Yeah, no, I just think that must be something to do with the the FIFO Victorian tenants they talked about.
Right.
The North Melbourne and Hawthorn, I guess, not wanting to. Maybe they signed that contract with Tasmania as like Tasmanian teams and maybe not wanting to share a ground. I don't know completely. It could be a caveat in the contract. But yeah, it seems pretty ridiculous to me to want more than one venue in a state you're not even willing to put one team in.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Point 5?
A minimum of 10 Tasmanian players in the AFL. I think they have at the moment. They're probably fleeting. They probably drops in and out.
Depending on whether Hugh Dixon gets in the Peel Reserves or the Peel League side.
Yeah. Exactly.
Look, I'll say on that point is that you can't expect a state that's been neglected with AFL funding to produce players. See, they think Tasmania takes farming that seriously. They just farm AFL players. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
You can't just water a child and make it into an AFL player. And you have to actually be willing to invest the time and the money and the resources in making these players.
And this is actually, I'm sure we'll do this topic on a later episode, but this is actually a really big thing I've been talking about the AFLW as well.
Yeah.
It starts at that Auskick level. And like, sure, you could say, I mean, I'll be the first to say it. Look, the AFLW, they don't have the skills and whatnot, but we need to start investing in these programs from when they're very, very small and they grow up and they live and they breathe footy. It's quite obvious that someone who's just started playing footy at 16 when they finally brought in women's leagues are not going to be as good as someone who had played when she was 6 and managed to have junior footy all growing up, which girls haven't had. And it's the same with Tasmania. 2 of their state teams in the last 3 years, I think, out of the TSL have had to fold because of lack of funding. And so their league isn't growing. And so obviously they're not cultivating as many players as they maybe once could have.
Here's my thing, right? Because obviously the Tasmanian State League is shrinking. So why don't, if you put a Tasmanian team in, before every game, TSL curtain raiser, free entry to that, or reduced entry to that, whatever the case may be, you get your double header, you get some exposure, you get a local media network, because what the West are doing here, and actually, I'm not a big fan of West Australia, but they are starting to showcase more local footy, which is good. They're live streaming the Waffle from time to time, they're live streaming some A-grade amateur stuff. Why not get the Mercury to do a similar thing? They're both Murdoch papers.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that much effort to transfer a product from an organisation over to the other side of the country and do a very similar thing. Like, there's so many opportunities, and with that as well, that's all of a sudden not region restricted.
Yeah.
I can watch the Tasmanian State League now.
Yeah, exactly. That would be so much better. And also, I think, the Tasmanian State League has just been pretty much shafted by the AFL.
It's forgotten.
It completely is forgotten, and it's not fair. They need things.
But in fairness, that's state leagues as a whole.
You're right. I guess purely because of how lucky we've been in WA with just the insane amount of talent we managed to cultivate in the footy area.
Yeah.
The Waffle stays very, very good. And then obviously the VFL's the VFL. But yeah, we think when you get to things like the QAFL and the Sandful and stuff, you're definitely right. It is neglected.
The Waffle has done so well because the Commission, and I don't give the Footy Commission here a lot of praise because they do make mistakes, as every organisation does, but one thing they've gotten really right is the regional zoning and forcing the clubs to invest in it.
Yeah.
Because that has produced, I mean, obviously you got your chance at Swans through that program. We've seen, I mean, East Fremantle's Geraldton Footy Factory, Claremont's Kimberley Footy Factory, Kalgoorlie for Subiaco has always been a good ground, good stomping ground for them. I think Claremont have Albany as well. They've got there's some big areas in the regions that allow these players to come in, and Tasmania, I mean, yes, it's not as geographically present as WA is, fair enough. Obviously, the model would need tinkering, but there's no reason why it can't work from a developmental level. If you force a Tasmanian AFL club to invest some of its $40 million of capital into talent development, you can have a lot more than 10 players from Tasmania in the AFL in 15 years' time.
Way more. Like, yeah, you're 100% right. You could have absolutely way more. And another idea I actually wanted to touch on about this finances would be, so funding this TSL league and then blocking them from the national draft for, I don't know, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, but they have the funding to pay these players AFL salaries if they're good enough.
Like the kind of lower end.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, what a draft pick gets paid, right?
Yeah.
So but yeah, these entry level salaries, continue to develop them, and then say maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. I don't necessarily know how long it would take.
But you give them time.
Yeah, you give them some time, and then an AFL Tasmanian team comes in. It gets. We'll just say it gets a normal draft run, but it also gets pick of the litter of all the TSL players.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really amazing to see, and that is how you would do something like 50,000 members straight away, because you would just have these Tasmanian kids that people have been watching in the TSL. It would be a Tasmanian team. It wouldn't just be, we had the top 10 draft picks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of things that would have to go into it. A lot of the finances, it would take a lot, but that was my sort of proposition that I would love to see them do, because I think people in Tasmania love Tasmania,
they're basically
right?
doing that now with all these next generation academies and all that. Anyway, so the concept's not completely foreign. Yes, the draft restrictions are probably a step, but it's also a step that needs to be taken. So I actually really like that concept, Jaden, because it allows us to really grow a team in its own little test tube and get it right. It's not getting interference from the mainland. It's letting us do its thing. And also, these players playing in the state league, A, grows the state league, B, grows the Tasmanian state team's fan base, and C, grows the profile of both to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Because if I'm an AFL...
And imagine that as AFL lovers, AFL scouts, coaches, they're interested in this Tasmanian league, right? Because they're suddenly scared about these players they're going to be up against in the next couple of years.
They're going to be tuning into the Mercury's live broadcast of the game, because they have to, because they need to be alive to this fact that this powerhouse is suddenly growing.
Yeah.
So is that all the points there?
And then we had... and then it was the respectful exit strategy for North and Hawthorn. And I think this is never... Personally, for me, I think this is never something that's going to happen. How can you really relocate a team that's called North Melbourne to Tasmania? It would just be so ham-fisted and forced. I think the AFL they're just going to do what they always do. There's just going to be bailout packages.
Yeah. So
they would lose too much of their fan base, and that's much, much, much less likely for this Tasmanian team to succeed if you just throw over some, dishevelled Victorian club and then go, here, like this guy.
If you think that's bad, in the 1980s, they were going to throw Fitzroy to California.
Really?
Yeah, there's a great YouTube video, which I strongly recommend you go and watch after this.
As in, California?
No, the other California.
That's crazy!
Yeah, it was genuinely really talked about. Go and, I can't remember who made it. I do apologise to the maker of it. I did watch it a couple of weeks ago.
Maybe we'll link it.
We will. It was a WA property tycoon who dreamt up the whole thing. It was really interesting. So... And it genuinely almost went through. It was that close to going through.
Ross
Oakley, who was the chairman at the time, got cold feet at the last second.
That's absolutely insane.
They announced it and everything. It was the something crocodiles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something else.
We could do a whole episode on that. I feel like we can't.
We could have the global AFL. We could have been... Yeah, imagine Chile versus Argentina in the AFL, mate.
Oh, can you imagine bloody Northern Ireland versus Ireland?
Oh, I don't want to.
Can you imagine? Oh, if they're international rules, but somehow more violent. But look, we'll come away from international politics now and back into Tasmania. They need the support Very simply, Hawthorn and North Melbourne, there is participation awards to the state saying, no, you can't have a team. Here, have one team that's not good anymore and one team that hasn't been good since the 90s. Off you go. Watch them twice a year.
And that's what it is, isn't it? It's a consolation prize, and it's just not enough. And it's no wonder that the state is shying away from the game of footy now, which is very disappointing because it is a game that we've built from essentially nothing. We all love it so much. It's such an amazing game to watch. It's so nice to watch a game develop without any real outside influence because obviously no one else in the world plays it. And yeah, I just absolutely love it, and I think it's criminal that they're trying to keep it away from part of the country.
We are 5 years away. Well, basketball's moving to Tasmania. Soccer is getting close. It's just the A-League have their own issues with expansion.
Yeah.
Which is a story for a whole other podcast.
It is, yeah.
But we are probably about 5 years away from losing Tasmania. It has to really make some progress in the next few years because the AFL is just so in this fixed mindset that they just can't have any kind of growth in the state. Whereas if you spend the time and you invest the money, it can happen.
And that's my philosophy on everything in life, not just building an AFL team, which I've obviously never done, but you're going to get out what you put in, right?
Yeah.
And if you aren't willing to put in anything initially, you're never going to get anything out of it. And you're right, and it really sucks because of everything that's happened with COVID. I doubt the AFL is going to be looking at taking any financial risks anytime soon.
That's true. But at the same time, is it not worth the risk for the potential reward?
I 100% would agree that it is, but also I think this whole COVID situation has really shown us how frugal the AFL is, and B, there's probably not as much. They're probably wasting a bit of money pretty frivolously, considering how hard and fast this COVID situation hit, and yes, the pay cuts hit.
But look at two of the teams in the competition, and the money they wasted on those.
Yeah, exactly, and
Tasmania can be a self-sustaining club if you accept.
It will be
if you accept the fact that it's not going to have ridiculous profit margins because it doesn't need to.
No, it definitely doesn't, and yeah, look, I agree. I will fight until I'm blue in the lips for a Tasmanian football team. I think they very much deserve it. I am just kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit here because I'm trying to give the AFL the benefit of the doubt, right? Because they have managed to build something that I absolutely love and I watch week in and week out. So I am trying, but I just not much of this whole Tasmanian rejection bid and these criteria that they've set them. A lot of it just doesn't make sense to me. To
that point, what has Gillon McLachlan done though?
What has he done?
Yeah, in terms of building this competition that we love.
That's true, actually.
Because it was Ross Oakley, it was Jackson, and it was Demetriou. And they're the ones that have made the difference. Yes, Demetriou said no to Tasmania, but he also said yes to two other teams that have made it more of a national competition, gotten more fans through the gates, and set up the competition the way it is. McLachlan's big thing was the AFLW. Again, story for another episode, whether it's worked or hasn't worked, whatever the case may be. But what has he done for the actual AFL?
Yeah, I just can't really. I would have to argue not that much. I think he's. Look, and again, I don't really want to get too much into the politics here, but I don't like Gill. I think he takes the easy way out, and I think he just struggles to make tough decisions. And he's also a fence sitter, which I don't think is a good thing for a man in his position. You need to make decisions and back your own decisions.
I would back Oakley, I would back Jackson, I would back Demetriou. I can't say the same for McLachlan.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't even really like Demetriou, but I was like, he's gonna do it, and I respect that. He
was a strong character.
He had his vision, and he tried to make it work. Whether or not I always agreed with it, whether or not it always worked, you always at least felt like he loved AFL,
and he had a plan.
Yeah. And I don't even know if Gil likes AFL or if he just likes money, to be honest.
And that's the thing, what's the direction, and this is a whole other topic as well, but like, what is the direction of the league under McLachlan? Like, we're not going to get any expansion. This guidelines is his guidelines. Yeah. This is the 2019 guidelines. This is his criteria.
He's setting these absolute ridiculous standards of trying to gatekeep Tasmania for no reason. And look, the AFLW needed to happen. I'm more than happy to, as I said, expand the AFL into a wider audience. But why not Tasmania as well? There's just no real reason I can think of.
Or to that, find a happy medium and put an AFLW team in Tasmania.
Yep. Also,
why couldn't we do that?
That could have instantly happened with the induction of the league, and that would have been great as well. That would have been a nice little actually testing the waters to see if maybe they did have something for an AFL side.
Why do we have two AFLW sides here in WA? whether you do fair enough, or you just have a West Australian side, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like, obviously, I like to see our girls do well in the footy, but I'm not going to lose sleep over us not having an AFLW side when we could potentially have an AFLW side in Tasmania testing the waters. And yeah, if they're obviously AFLW attendance is what it is, fair enough. But if they're still ranking in the top percentile, surely that's a sign that Tasmania is crying out for the national game to be a national game in their state.
Yeah, I would agree. There's, like I said, there's so many people in Tasmania that cannot afford to travel to watch games, and they just want to watch some footy. And if the AFLW is what they have, I'm sure they will go to watch it, and that would be a great sign of, hey, please give us an AFL team. You're right, we're crying out for one.
I can safely say that if Fremantle and West Coast both dropped off the face of the earth tomorrow, and the only footy I had was West Coast AFLW team, I'm buying my membership tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd be there every week as well.
Because it's what, when you love a sport, you need something to channel that into.
Yeah.
So why are we just letting this love for sport that Tasmania have go in other directions? So other franchises can make money.
Yeah.
Like, soccer's not the national game, basketball's not the national game, but they're the ones getting Tasmania.
Yeah, and just by nature, that's where the people are going to flock to now. When they could have so easily, they could have had something really incredible by now if they had have just committed in, what was Gold Coast 2011?
Yeah. Well, 2008 was the bid.
2008 was the bid, yeah. If they had have just committed in 2008 to Tasmania, came into the league in 2011, they could have had something really, really special by now.
Especially
a lot more special than what Gold Coast have, put it that way.
That's true. Especially because they'd have the support, the backing, and a home final makes a whole lot of difference when you've got a passionate home crowd. We've seen that with teams in the West.
Yeah.
We've seen it with the big Victorian clubs and the South Australian clubs. Even to an extent, Sydney. When the home crowd turns up for a final, it's a different game.
It is. And it's just such an amazing experience, I think, for the players as well. Also the fans. But the players, like, having that really, really strong backing behind you just gives you that extra boost you need and can just elevate you. And that's an experience that a lot of... I mean, I don't even think most Gold Coast players will ever experience something like that, right? Which
not at the Suns, no.
And, yeah. And you could really have that in Tasmania, and it's sad that they're keeping it away.
Look at the small, and I say that in inverted commas, Victorian clubs.
Yep.
Melbourne, North Melbourne, St Kilda, Western Bulldogs. Those are my four. How is it that all four of those arguably have more club legends than the bigger clubs? It's because the fan base is so passionate that Nick Riewoldt doesn't want to go, David Neath doesn't want to go, right now Bontempelli doesn't want to go, but also Brad Johnson, Luke Darcy, all these guys. Boomer Harvey. Scotty West. These guys become club legends because the fan base gets right behind them, and Tasmania has all the bearings of a Western Suburbs Footscray team, has all the potential of that Moorabbin St Kilda pocket to become this massively supported club on a wider scale too.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a very good analogy. Just maybe not as many fans, but the amount of passion per fan is up there with the absolute top clubs. With these, they die by their club, and you would have that in Tasmania. And
if your only choice is Tasmania or not Tasmania, you're backing your state. Tasmanians are as is every state. All our states are very proud people.
Yeah.
We turn up for State of Origin. We turn up for the Under-18s Carnival. We get behind the people. Even at Optus, I've been to Under-18s games. You'd be surprised how many people turn up.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, how many people, East Fremantle, South Fremantle supporters, just by de facto go for the Eagles because that's who you switch to.
Yeah.
And then by the time the Dockers came into the competition, they already had built that connection with the Eagles, so they just never decided to switch. Obviously, Fremantle got a very, very loyal fan base as well, so some people did switch. But
I know. As I've obviously been heavily involved in Fremantle now for many years. I know plenty of Sharks supporters that are West Coast members. I know plenty of Sharks supporters that are Fremantle members. I know it's the same at South. I've spoken to South Fremantle supporters quite a bit about this, and you cannot begrudge that because it's what you're enshrined in.
Yeah.
Like, the reality is, West Coast got, an 8-year head start on the Dockers, 87 to 95?
Yeah.
So, of course, they're going to have more fans. Like, yes, Tasmania's only ever going to be a one-club state. No one's suggesting they're going to get two, despite the venues. Yeah,
despite the multiple venues, ridiculous request that they have when WA's only ever had one venue and have two clubs, well, especially Eagles, but even Dockers, very, very passionate diehard fans who bring numbers to stadiums.
Brisbane never moved from the Gabba. Why do they need to?
Yeah, exactly.
Sydney have never... Well, they've had Allianz, but even then, that was because there was Olympic Games there.
Yep.
We're not holding Olympic Games in Tasmania,
yeah.
So we're not getting two 60,000 seat stadiums. It's just absurd. And it's really, I think, almost offensive.
It is offensive. He's saying, Gill's basically sat there and said, I don't have faith in you to be worth my investment, so you're not getting it. And he's set these ridiculous preconceived notion and circumstances that are just unrealistic, and it's insulting.
I would love to actually hear like a Tasmanian perspective on this and see how they feel on this issue of being completely kicked in the teeth.
Yeah, just overlooked consistently.
It is because like there was talk a couple of years ago about a third AFL team in Joondalup. And it's like there was serious talk about that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what were their criteria?
And I mean, obviously, it was before my time, but I wonder how much reluctancy there was to even bring the Eagles in the first place. And then, yeah, obviously now you're saying they're talking about a third one.
Well, the rumour was that the Dockers were brought in because the Eagles were too good.
Yeah. Oh no, I think there's actually
and if you look at the numbers behind it, I mean, you can certainly make a case for it.
We'll try and
we are Zach Dawson as a football team. We're the perennial spoilers for West Coast. We didn't do much for it, but we were there to try.
But I'll try and keep this as short as I can. But yeah, I have a lot. Maybe we'll do an episode on the Waffle or the Eagles or something in the future. But I agree. I think the Waffle was such an untouched, beautiful competition that cultivated a lot of really, really decimating talent and was just consistently overlooked. Again, because we're West Australian, Victorians don't like West Australians. Eagles managed to come in and find a lot of this talent, build a very, very strong squad very, very early. And we've seen it as well in the Big Bash, right? Where they've tried to force another team into WA.
Yeah.
People have then suddenly turned around and gone, wait, WA can't win stuff, it's WA. And then they've tried to handicap us. And that, I genuinely believe that. I think that's what they did with the Dockers. And look at, they now are a super supported club, and now we have two successful clubs in the AFL. So it's worked out.
Yeah.
Just stuff the AFL. Bring one to Tasmania.
One thing I will say, don't expect Gil to be on the show anytime soon, folks. One thing I will say is, with the Big Bash, you've brought it up now. I think we have to talk about it because obviously they do have the Hobart Hurricanes there in their bright purple, which is very nice.
Yeah.
They sell it every week.
They do. They are a good squad as well.
They had Xavier Doherty.
Yeah.
They're a great team. He was the first ever BBL hat-trick taker.
Yeah. No, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? Tasmania, time and time again, have proved they love sport, and they're going to sit there and support whoever the hell is Tasmanian because they're Tasmanian.
Do you know what they're going to call the NBL team, apparently?
Nah.
The Tasmanian Timbers. And they'll still turn up for that.
They will. The worst name ever.
But why Hobart called the Hurricanes? There hasn't been a hurricane there since 2000 BC. Why are we calling them the Hurricanes?
Yeah. Look, I don't know, but yeah, look, it's just real disappointing, to be honest, from the AFL. I wanted to try and be as constructive as I could and try and kind of play both sides, but I just can't here.
Especially with that criteria, it really makes it hero and villain as opposed to two respectable arguments.
Yeah, it does. You're right.
We touched on the draft zoning and the restrictions around Tasmanians' talent while growing the TSL before. I want to expand on that with player retention because we've seen it with more so GWS than Gold Coast, I think. Players moving on. Brisbane also have that issue to an extent. So how are Tasmania going to craft a culture strong enough to keep players at the club and in the state?
And I think we actually touched on this just before when we talked about Dogs, Saints, North. They're just going to be such a loved club with such a loyal fan base that genuinely just bleed for their club. And that counts for so much. Just obviously the AFL was just like, oh, people are going to want to live in Gold Coast, they're going to want to stay there. But their players are crap, their results are crap, there's no faith in the coaching staff.
And you've got to remember, with climate change, Tassie's going to be having summers soon. It's going to be fine.
Exactly, right? And suddenly it's going to be very luxurious to live there and Gold Coast will be a desert.
Disneyland Hobart coming in.
But I think that's where it's going to come in. It's going to be the club culture. A lot of Victorian people don't want to live in WA, but then they get drafted over to a West Australian club, and they end up staying. A lot of them, especially we're seeing with the Eagles, and then the Eagles get the WA players wanting to come back as well, and then they manage to build something. Imagine that with Tasmania, they could either people risk drafting a Tasmanian player, knowing he might go back to Tasmania later on in his career, or they leave him for the Devils to pick up.
Yeah.
And then Tasmania suddenly get 2 mini drafts because they can then use their picks on whoever they want and then still have their pick of the litter for Tasmanian players. Like, I think they could build a very, very good team. And player retention, initially coming into this argument, before I sort of did a bit of research, I was thinking maybe it'll be a big issue and maybe I can see the AFL's point of view. But after breaking it down, I just really can't.
David Mundy came to WA 15 years ago with 3 million never left. Gaff denied big money from North Melbourne.
Big money too. Like, we're talking an overspending North looking at a top 5 midfielder in the comp. Could you imagine what that would have been?
Yeah, to return to his home state as well. Matthew Pavlik spent 16 years here being drafted from South Australia, was offered plenty of times by both South Australian clubs, never went back because the club culture, when it's done right, is strong enough. Now, Fremantle's internal club culture is a story for another topic.
It is.
But
and Eagles as well have had their more than their fair share of internal club drama issues.
But both external fan bases are the most loud, vocal, passionate, possibly in the competition. Definitely with the exception of the Big Four. Yeah. They're the 2 strongest in the competition. I don't think Adelaide's ones hold a candle to them, and I don't think Sydney's do either.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. It's very, very admirable to watch the passion that we over here in WA have for footy, and I'm a Blues man saying that. So
yeah, one thing I will point out is this is a bit of a almost like a counter topic is with the players that I'm looking at here, the majority of the top players from Tasmania that we mentioned in the honour roll, stayed as one club players. Alistair Lynch, Brisbane, Fitzroy into the Lions, Matty Richardson of the Tigers, both the revolts for their respective clubs.
Huey Greenwood, through no fault of his own, ended up leaving, got kind of kicked out from Adelaide, so it's hard to even hold that against him.
Robinson was beaten savagely by Malthouse every Wednesday, so he left.
Yeah.
So, Tom Bellchambers at Essendon as well. These March checks so far. Birkshaw, he's gone to Brisbane in the very twilight of his career, but he's, 250, nearly 300 games at Hawks?
Yeah, you'll always remember him as a Hawthorn player, won't
Yeah.
you? A bit like Luke Hodge. Maybe he sort of thought he was a Luke Hodge Jr.-esque.
Aldi Luke Hodge.
Yeah.
But I think the point I'm trying to get across here, Jaden, is that Tasmanian people are going to get behind the team, and these players will feel that attachment to it.
They will. Look at Richardson. He absolutely loves Richmond still to this day.
Yeah.
As a Tasmanian boy.
Look at maybe in 20 years' time this becomes an issue. Maybe it does. But for now, these players get to be the start of something in their own home state, and they get to make their legacy first.
Yeah.
They get to be the Albert Thurgoods for Essendon. They get to be these club champions straight away. They get to, put the pavement down around Bodstone Arena and make it their home. And I think that's so important here, is that they'll get to cultivate their legacy and their opportunities through what they're being gifted by this unique storm in a teacup situation that presents itself to them now.
It does, and I just think the ecosystem is so ready for it. Like I said, if you do put in the effort, like you brought up as a good point, Rome wasn't built in a day, and if they put in the effort now, that not just the AFL, the state, the country will reap the rewards for it for a long time to come, because there is so much untapped potential there. And you're right, if we don't move soon, it's going to be NBL, it's going to be A-League, it's going to be nothing wrong with the BBL. I don't necessarily think the cricket.
Well, they can coexist.
Exactly right. The cricket and the football fan bases aren't exactly very cannibalistic. But with the NBL and the A-League, I just think, why would you not try and take advantage of that?
There is no reason why you couldn't offer a slightly discounted membership that gets you reciprocal benefits of both. So you get a year-round Tasmanian sports membership that gets you access to the Hurricanes, access to the Devils, potentially maybe some racing benefits in there as well with Launceston and Hobart. No reason why you can't actually... they said, what was their point? They wanted unified Tasmania. You can do that if you invest in it and you accept that it's not going to be 800% profit margins year in, year out. You need to sacrifice a bit to make it work.
And why would an entire state turn around and go, yes, we're all going to follow this AFL club, when the AFL has done nothing but, as you said, kick them in the teeth the last 10 years?
You've got to back in Tasmanians to actually get behind their team, and they will if you stop telling them that they can't do it and they're not good enough.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're going to lose the next Carl Ditterich to the A-League. We're going to lose the next Revolts to the NBA. We're going to lose the next generation of Tasmanian superstars to cricket.
And even if all the AFL is some money-hungry giant, they're losing money as well, right? So they genuinely don't have a leg to stand on when they want to sit here and just tell us that it wouldn't work. Because every single thing they want as a company and everything we want as fans, and I assume everything Tasmanians want, is all there. It's all ready. It's all right for the picking. You just got to start.
Before we wrap it up, I want to look back at those original points.
Yep.
And make them a bit more realistic. I think 20,000 members is a more than reasonable request.
Yep.
I can accept that. That is still a strong enough paying membership base to sustain a decent enough level of financing. Upfront capital, this is probably the only one I can say, okay, that's understandable. Because you want the club to be able to survive in case things go wrong early. I understand. I can accept the 40 million, especially with the federal Labor government pitching in 25.
Yeah. So without that Labor pitch in, and obviously in an ideal world where this COVID hasn't hit us so hard, I would love to see maybe a 20 million, and then the AFL will bid to match whatever they can get from, say, sponsorships or something.
Remember, Tasmania hasn't been hit that bad either.
No, Tasmania hasn't been, but the AFL has. Which is why I was saying I would love to see the AFL match what Tasmania can provide, but I don't think in the current financial climate that's realistic.
That's fair.
But with the $25 million pledge from the federal government, if that stays, or if that happens when Labor win the next election, or who knows what happens, but yeah, if that $40 million is fine, you're right, provided they have that initial $25 million investment. Because I think it's not unfair to expect them to be able to get $15 million of their own money.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't like the unified Tasmania point. That's too vague.
I really like your idea of some sort of statewide sports membership that gives you access to the BBL, the footy, the NBL, the A-League, everything. Like
No reason why the government can't get their cut out of that as well. If they do the program, distribute the funds to the sporting and racing clubs as a result of that. There's no reason why they can't get their slice of the pie too.
Yeah, exactly.
I can more than accept that. AFL standard venue, they do have that. That's called Blundstone Arena.
Yeah.
Can fit 20,000 people. It's given that is in proportion with their population versus what Optus is to WA versus what the MCG is to Victoria. I think that's more than reasonable.
Yep, and also I did also just quickly read they fit 25,000 people there for the 1979 TSL Grand Final, so they can do it as well.
People will go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's so disappointing, and I think they can absolutely do it. So it just needs to be a bit more realistic. I mean, with 10 players in the AFL, we've covered that. It's pretty simple to do if you actually invest in the state.
Yeah.
You can't. That's like going into the New York Stock Exchange, putting down $10 and saying, right, I want $2 million from Apple, please. That's not how it works. You need to put down at least $1 million to get your $2.
Yeah, exactly. It's risk versus reward, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and the exit strategy one, pretty simple, bailout money.
Yep, that's what they're going to do. There's no way they're going to relocate because that is a setup that is destined to fail. Tasmania don't want your scraps AFL. They want their own thing to be built so they can be proud of and they can have passion for it.
Or if you want to make it completely financial free, is that maybe Hawthorn and North Melbourne get the third choice from that Tasmanian lock system.
Oh yeah, that's another good thing.
Maybe they poach a couple of players from that. Obviously not the best ones because we need the team to be strong, but they can have that third line and they can take a player each.
Yeah, maybe each draft they can have like one priority pick or something.
Yeah.
Going forward after the team has been developed, obviously.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't have access to an academy there and to a talent zone there, because if you invest enough money, you'll have a strong enough. You could probably divide the state into 4 zones. No reason why Hawthorn and North Melbourne can't split one and Tasmania has 3. There's no reason why you can't do that.
Yep, I agree.
Well, Jaden, that pretty much wraps us up here for episode 6 of the Darting Around podcast. We all hope you've enjoyed the conversation. Do let us know in the comments your thoughts on the Tasmanian relocation or the potential location of the club. We'll also drop a link into that California AFL expansion video.
Oh yeah, very excited to check that out. Actually, can't believe I've never seen it before.
It's pretty. I do apologise to the creator of it for not remembering your name. It just kind of came to me mid conversation. I'd seen it recently, but very good video. Highly recommend checking it out after you finish up this. Jaden, we will see you next time on the show.
Yeah, very excited. Can't wait.
Absolutely. See you soon, Matt.